You guys want to know what me and Bob disagree on? It's defunding the HOA. However, one thing we can agree on, guys, is Badlands Munitions Company. Manufactured right here in the United States. What I carry, this is Plus P 124 grain gold dot. Guys, this is 1,260 feet per second. It is lightning fast and it is going to protect you. Badlands Munitions has hooked us up with a 10% off coupon code. Guys, with code 110SAS, you get 10% off all ammunition at Badlands Munitions Company. That is the homies supporting the homies and supporting American-made manufacturing. Did it again. JDs and Letterman, welcome back to the show. This is 110 SAS Actual. A little bit of German space magic here today. HK CC9, their all new super compact, micro compact 9mm pistol. Super interesting gun, and a gun I typically, honestly, I wouldn't review, but it is HK, and I do like HK products, especially their pistols and a lot of their old school rifles. So I felt kind of obligated to pick one of these things up and just tell you guys how it is. So I missed out on that first round. It seems to me that these pistols are very difficult to get. I'm not too sure why. I guess they got a little behind in production or something must have happened, but it seemed like there was one huge batch that went out earlier this year, sometime March, and it's been like radio silence since. And finally they're starting to show back up at dealers. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to pick one of these guys up here. It's kind of an interesting little gun. I gotta be honest, I typically don't like micro compact pistols. In fact, I very rarely carry micro compact pistols, but it's an HK gun, so it's gotta be great, right? I figured, you know, it wouldn't be a terrible thing to have a very small gun that, you know, that you can put in a very small holster, in a suit jacket, somewhere on your belt. A very just concealable firearm, but also still very usable and relevant today. I think micro compacts do have a place in today's society, in today's gun ownership, but it's gotta do it well. And I feel like since the dawn of time, since pistols have gotten smaller and smaller, I feel pistols have unfortunately gotten less and less comfortable to shoot and just lack in performance. But again, HK, German space magic. Maybe they can do something totally different. So we picked one up. Now, let's just start at the top here. We have their all new ground up design. They said, hey, if we are going to make an ultra compact pistol here in the United States, it needs to be light, it needs to be very concealable, and it needs to shoot very, very smooth. I do feel that micro compact pistols are just a little bit more difficult to shoot. Not necessarily because 9mm has an outstanding amount of recoil. Let's be real, it doesn't. But they are a little bit more snappy than their full-size counterparts. You know, if you look at like a 4-inch or a 5-inch 9mm pistol, those are extraordinarily flat shooting, even without ports, without a comp. They're very simple, very easy to shoot and return to zero. I have always found that short, little pistols, unfortunately, have been a little bit more snappy. And I'll be honest, I've always felt that my splits and accuracy between those split times have suffered the smaller and smaller the pistol I go. And we'll definitely talk a lot more about how the gun shoots. You can get this gun optic cut or non-optic cut. It is the RMS-C footprint, so basically you can get all of the cool Chinese optics. I feel like there's just not a lot of American manufacturers who really seem to care about getting the RMS-C footprint. I really wish there were more, but unfortunately it is kind of, in my opinion, dominated by Holosun, and you know, it is what it is. I'm not a huge fan of Holosun optics, but it goes on there and it plops right on. That's pretty cool. You do have your regular cover, just like every single optics cut pistol has. I will say one thing that was weird is that those screws that keep the cover, obviously, on the gun, do not work in the actual optic. It's not the end of the world. Just get the correct screws for your optic. But I do think that was weird. I feel those should just be like a common piece and you should be able to use those. Whatever, not the end of the world. Just get the right screws for this. Screws are extraordinarily cheap and they almost always come with the optic anyways. But I did think that was weird because a lot of other pistol manufacturers do that. If you guys don't like optics and you don't need a red dot on your concealed carry pistol, no sweat. Comes without it. You can get that as an option. Now, they do have a 1913 pick rail slot for all of your flashlights. So I would say the Streamlight is probably your best choice for these micro compact flashlights. This one here is meant for a SIG, and unfortunately the SIG ones, it's not the 193, the P365. So I put this guy on here thinking like, oh, that'll be fine. Nah, it lasts like 3 or 4 shots and it just like flies off the front. So that didn't work, and that's why you guys did not see the stream light in the video, because it just wouldn't hold on. It's fighting for its life, bro, and it's just like after 6 shots, like, okay, all right, see you later then. I don't think that's a big deal. I'm pretty sure from Streamlight you can get the little itty bitty nubs that go into these things, and you can change that and get your regular Streamlight on there. I don't think there's a ton of information out there though on getting a flashlight on these things, just because the pistols are still so new. But again, it's 1913 pick rail, so pretty straightforward. Moving over to the slide stop, you do have an ambi slide stop, which I do like. I'm not a left-handed shooter, I'm a right-handed shooter, so that doesn't really mean anything for me. But you left-handed guys will definitely appreciate that. One thing I will say, however, is that the slide stop is, one, extremely gritty and very, very small. It is almost flush with the frame. So if you can see here, the slide stop doesn't protrude very far out from the frame. In fact, just a tiny, tiny bit right there on the top. And it's just enough to get some thumb on there and get it a good positive pressure on it, but it's also just not enough in the perfect wrong amount to get a good press on that thing. Like, you have to be very intentional with your thumb. And I guess when it comes to a CCW kind of weapon, it would make sense that you don't want to ride the slide stop, because there's not a ton of real estate on this frame to get your big paws on there. But I wish it was a little bit bigger. I wish it was maybe a touch more extended, maybe a touch up and back, but I think that is ultimately just a training issue, and I don't think it's the end of the world. It is a very small gripe, but I will say, if you get one and you pick one up, it is probably the first thing I noticed that I was just like, I don't really like that at all. I wish it was just a little bit larger. And it's really, like, when you have this gun in a holster, it's not going to protrude. Like, if you appendix carry, it's not going to protrude into your belly, because that part's going to be covered up by the holster. So it's not like it's going to make it more uncomfortable to carry if they put a larger one on there. I find that it was very, very gritty, and it's very stiff. I've shot this gun just under 1,000 rounds now, and it still hasn't really lightened up. Maybe it will just take a little bit more fiddling around and kind of just really working with it to kind of soften that up and make it not such a, I don't want to say intentional, because it's still intentional, but it's a little too intentional. Like, you really have to focus on it and kind of take your mental focus away from what's going on in front of you to make sure that you hit this thing and really get that thing down. It's strange. I'm not going to lie. I kind of dislike it. I wish it was just a little bit larger, but not the end of the world. Same thing with the mag release. I find that it's actually kind of a pain, and it's too far recessed, in my opinion, into the grip module. So if you are shooting your pistol and you come out, the first thing that you're going to do, so you're shooting here, and then you're like, okay, the gun's empty. We've got slide lock to the rear. We got to get a new mag in here. We need more bullets. So you roll the pistol over and you push it. I feel as if the fattest part of my thumb can't get down into there, and it makes me want to have to actually move my thumb back a little bit and then push in with a little bit more of the bony part as opposed to the meaty part. Again, I'm certain that was a very intentional thing that they did, because they don't want people going in that, oh no, oh crap moment, I have to use my CCW, oh god, and you drop the mag. I've done that with plenty of my like performance and, you know, range style pistols, competition style pistols, to where I've got a really tight grip on this thing, and I've gripped it so tight that I have this extended mag release on it, and I have dropped the mag before. It doesn't happen very often. It is a training issue, and it can be trained through. However, I will say this one here is just, it's a little too recessed in my opinion. I wish it was just a little bit larger to hit. There's like two trains of thought, in my opinion, when it comes to these CCW style pistols, and it's enlarge everything so it's dummy proof, and you do not miss it when seconds count, and you have to use this, and you have to reload this and manipulate this weapon in a moment that, you know, stress is at an all-time high. And the second train of thought is make it so small so when you are in that super high stress moment, you don't bump anything and do the wrong thing and ride the slide stop or ride the mag button and drop your mag. So it's, I feel they went that route. They went the latter. They said, let's make it small, let's make it extremely intentional. And they definitely did. There is no ifs and buts about that. They made it extraordinarily intentional to manipulate the controls on this weapon. In my opinion, I don't like that. I feel it's just a little too much. So I can train through this, I feel like, but I don't want to have to, because I want commonality across all my pistols. And like my little CCW gun, I don't want to have to roll my pistol over and then move my thumb back to get that bony part on there, because I'm squeezing almost as tight as I can right now. And I can't get this mag button, versus if I just move it back, it comes right out. So you have to take your thumb and move it back to get to this little bony part on top, versus like the meaty part of your thumb. It's not the end of the world, guys, but also too, I know, and I've been a part of these big focus groups at big companies. I just spent an entire week at Leopold last month talking about the smallest of smallest things on different optics. And I'm certain that they had a huge focus group and a bunch of people were talking. We did the exact same thing of big buttons or small buttons, minimalist or so large that you can't miss them. And they went the minimalist route. And unfortunately, I feel they should have found a place in between in manipulating these controls. Takedown, it's super easy. It reminds me just like the SIGs and their VP9, if I'm not mistaken. Slide lock to the rear, take this little lever, toss it all the way down, move the slide forward, and it comes off. Now, next thing I want to talk about is the grip and the actual grip module and the grip texture on it. I found that the grip texture is absolutely abysmal. I actually had to put tape on this thing, a little bit of sticky tape, to get a little bit more positive of a grip on this thing. I think that the stippling on this is extraordinarily weak. I find that it's probably some of the worst stippling I've ever seen on the market. Not necessarily that the quality is bad or like the texture is bad. It's just that the texture is not nearly aggressive enough, I feel, for a CCW. Let's say just at the range, I don't need the most aggressive grip possible because it's not a super high stress situation. But when it comes to my CCWs, I like a little bit of extra tackiness. I like a little bit of extra grip on my grip, if you will. In the moment, if you ever were to have to use this thing and you present your pistol and it's just like your hands are immediately just go sweaty, you know, whatever situation that you find yourself in, these little pistols, I feel, need just a touch more aggressive of a grip texture on them. And this one does not do that. This feels, honestly, it feels like they just lasered it on there and like, okay, it looks like grip texture, good to go, we'll send that. It's abysmal, in my opinion. I really dislike it. I just think that they probably should have just put tape on it, because I think tape honestly gives me a more positive grip over this thing than the actual grip texture. One thing I do like is they do have the thumb indexes stippled on here and they're laser etched. So that's really nice. It gives you a good point of contact that says, hey, your thumb's in the right place there, buddy, go to work. Again, there's just no grip to it. There's nothing tacky about it. There's nothing aggressive about it whatsoever. And here's the thing, like with a concealed carry gun, obviously comfort is a huge thing, and a super aggressive grip texture is going to cause you to be just a touch more uncomfy. There's no ifs and buts about that, unless you have on your belt and you put a t-shirt in between the grip module and your belly button or your hip, wherever you decide that you want to wear your concealed carry gun. Yeah, it's just going to rub. And I get that. You don't want to go too aggressive, but also I am going to sacrifice a little bit of comfort for that good positive grip texture on there that just keeps it in place. And the thing of it is too, is these little pistols, they're definitely a little bit more snappy than a full-size gun. And when you have a full-size gun, obviously you don't need as much grip texture because it's just going to stay in place and it's going to return to zero much faster. And I think just much more consistently versus these little guys. Even though it's 9mm, which doesn't have hardly any recoil, it still kind of pushes you around a little bit. I wish they would have done something different with the grip texture. I think it's abysmal, and I think it's honestly just put those little diamonds that like Glock has on there. It's like that, but even worse. So now, out of the box, you're going to get two mags. You get one 12 and one 10 round mag. I'm going to shoot the 12s every single time. It's my CCW. Those extra 2 rounds, while it may not seem like much, I want all of my extra rounds so I can miss more. I don't see any real reason to run the 10s whatsoever unless you're in one of those compliant states or something like that. The 12 rounds make way more sense, and they also get you just a touch extra of a little bit of grip ledge right there for that pinky finger. And what's nice too is there is a little bit of attention to detail on the actual mag base plate. It is stippled right there. I do like that. Again, the grip texture sucks, but it is a little bit of grip texture, and I will say at the angle that it is, it kind of helps with your pinky right there. So I do like that. The mags, they're all metal other than the base plate, and the follower is probably just a polymer, but I do like the metal mags. I think they feel quality. HK's always done really well with mags in my opinion. Now, let's talk about actually shooting this firearm. First things first, as you guys seen in the video, we had a couple failures, actually more than a couple failures. Guys, we had 8 malfunctions in 1,000 rounds, and they were sporadic. It wasn't just in the very beginning. Actually, the first like 200 to 300 rounds were perfect, and then it started to kind of shine and show all of these. I don't know what it's necessarily what kind of issue it is, but it is an issue and something is going on with this pistol, and it's going to have to go back to HK. So as you guys can see here in the video, we have a spent case in the chamber, and the slide has locked to the rear, and it obviously could not push a fresh cartridge into the chamber because it never extracted the spent case that is in the chamber. The case itself is not stuck. You can take your finger and just pull it right out. You can just drop the mag as well and drop the slide stop and rack it, and then it extracts that case. So I don't necessarily know what's going on there. It's a very weird malfunction that I gotta be honest, I haven't experienced that one before. Stovepipes, double feeds, things like that, that makes a little bit more sense than that one there. So I don't know if we have some sort of extractor issue with this pistol, but the weird thing of it is that when it comes to a CCW gun, I in no way, shape, or form am I going to carry this gun until I get at least 500 rounds through this thing. I have to know that this thing is going to perform. 1,000 rounds is what we did for this video because I wanted to see and further investigate what was going on there, because it was right around like the 300 to 400 round mark did we get a few of those exact same malfunctions. So I'm like, okay, we got to keep shooting this thing. We need to figure out exactly what's going on. And I can't for the life of me figure out exactly what it is. I'm sure one of you guys will be like, oh, it's exactly that, blah, blah, blah. So I appreciate that if you guys do chime in on that. I would like to know as well. It seems to be that it's just a very weak extractor and it's just not catching on that guy there. I really dislike that because, again, a CCW gun, it just has to work. It's simply put, guys, there's no excuses. There's zero give when it comes to a concealed carry gun. I mean, even on like your range pistols and stuff, yes, fighting through malfunctions is something that you're inevitably going to have to do with your range pistol, but you don't want that. You don't want to have to do that. Ideally, that never happens because you have a quality firearm and you keep up on maintenance, you keep it clean, and you replace any parts that are out of spec or just worn. This guy obviously does not have any worn parts because 1,000 rounds for this pistol is absolutely nothing. 1,000 rounds on pretty much any pistol is nothing. So I believe we have inherently something out of spec here. I don't know if it's a chamber issue. Maybe there is a little burr in the chamber that is just kind of catching on cases or something. I looked at it. I don't see anything in there, so I'm feeling it might be an extractor issue, but I can't quite say for certain. And it's a little frustrating because, again, I can't trust this pistol. I absolutely positively do not trust this pistol. I would have to send this back to HK. HK would have to completely, figure out exactly what's going on with it and absolutely positively fix whatever is going on with this. And then guess what? I got to go buy another 1,000 rounds for this pistol to put through this thing to make sure that in my brain, I know I can trust and I can rely on this pistol. Because as of right now, I'm good. Like, no thanks. I don't need a $700 HK pistol that doesn't do reliability as good as a Glock. And Glocks are much cheaper than that. And I don't really like shooting Glocks, to be quite frank. I would much rather shoot an HK pistol. But this one here, no thanks. I'm out. That's really frustrating because I really want to like this pistol. And what's also kind of frustrating too is that, man, it shoots really smooth. It's a very, very smooth shooting pistol. The first thing I noticed, just the first mag, I was like, oh, that doesn't feel like a snappy little CCW pistol. It shoots incredibly smooth. I have a SIG P365 XL. Again, I don't really carry small pistols. I just carry a full-size pistol, and I'm just going to conceal it the best I possibly can. Simply because I perform with a full-size pistol absolutely better than I do with a micro compact pistol. The only reason I'm carrying one of these is that my attire simply does not allow for a full-size gun on my person. I need something smaller that I can actually conceal. I don't want anybody to see it until like I have to use it and my life is on the line. I feel this HK CC9 shoots plus P Badlands munitions ammo as soft as regular stuff through this. It takes plus P ammo and makes it feel like I'm shooting just regular 115 grain ball ammo through this SIG P365. It shoots incredibly smooth and it's very flat. It's a very weird experience because I'm so used to these little guys here just like kind of almost working you, and it feels almost a little like you don't feel like as much as a man with a little 9mm pistol kind of like whips your wrists and you're like, are you serious? Like, come on, get better. But this does a very good job. It's very flat. It returns to zero very fast. It feels great. It's a really good shooting pistol. It really is. I've shot a lot of very small concealed carry pistols, Glock 43X, the 42, the P365s, all the FN pistols. I've shot just about all of them. And this thing is by far the smoothest shooter. That is one thing I cannot stress enough, is that they did a really good job on this thing as a shooter. Next, let's talk about the trigger. It is a striker fired trigger, so it's going to be miserable, especially if you ever shot even the world's worst 1911 trigger. A phenomenal striker fired trigger is just going to feel like garbage. This one is definitely not garbage. It's just not great. It is a CCW pistol, so it's going to be a heavy 5.5 pounds trigger pull, just to make it intentional that you are not negligent discharging your firearm when, on the draw, in the oh crap kind of moment. So I get that and I understand that. I do feel, however, a heavy trigger is 1000% a training issue. If you can't manipulate a 2-pound trigger the same way you manipulate a 5-pound trigger, that is a training issue. It's the same thing with like oversized dots. You see all of these like 32 MOA circled donuts on all of these red dot pistols and stuff. That is a training issue. Just train through that, because you're never going to use that actual real, that huge giant dot. You are always going to use that small center 3.25 5 MOA dot. I feel with the trigger here, it's just like, hey, we know this is a CCW gun, so we don't have to make this trigger that great. We can just make it kind of a heavy pull, and you guys will like it because it says HK on it. I will say it is better than any Glock trigger. There is no ifs and buts about that. It is not the best striker fired trigger I have ever used, but it is by far not the worst as well. It's just extraordinarily meh that it's really tough with striker fired triggers, man. They're just, it's like that rubber band, and it's just not 1000% predictable like, let's say, a 1911 trigger where you have that absolutely perfect, crispy, candy cane-like snap. Oh, I know when that's going to go bang. I can prep that trigger, get it right at the wall, and bang, pop it. Whereas this guy here is just this little bit of creep, little bit of bang, then it finally goes. Now, the reset, it does do pretty well. It is a short reset. I like that. There's not a ton of over travel. Once you hit that reset, you just pop it, bang, there it goes. Okay, you're back in business. So that kind of concludes the CC9 here. I feel HK just kind of wanted a part of the market share, and it took them quite a few years to get this pistol to market and get it to their, standards of reliability that HK has been known for. They make phenomenal guns. They arm tons and tons of actual real militaries and real hitters. So they've been around the block and they have made countless successful firearms. In my opinion, it's another gun. I don't feel that it stands amongst the crowd way higher. I don't think that it does anything in particular better than what a SIG P365 will, a Glock does, and all of the other micro compact pistols. It's just another gun. The only thing that I will say that it does much better, that is noticeably better than the rest, is it shoots a little bit softer. And it is not substantial, but it is enough to notice for sure. That is the best thing that I can say for this pistol. But we had a ton of reliability issues with this pistol. I absolutely positively will not be carrying this pistol. I will not trust my life to this pistol until it goes back to HK and I get it back and then I have to spend another $250 to $300 on 1,000 rounds of ammunition to run through this gun to verify that they did their job right the second time, because they didn't do it right the first time. It's very frustrating because this is not a cheap pistol, and this is a gun that is supposed to be a tool. This isn't a fancy weapon. This is not something like a relic that you hand down over generations. It's a pistol. It is a handgun. It is a tool. And it doesn't do its job for me. So this one's going back. And to be quite frank with you guys, it's just meh. It's an extremely meh pistol. I absolutely love HK pistols. I think they are phenomenal shooters. This one here is it's just not it. It's just not it, guys. So I believe we have a wrap on this guy here. Guys, as always, run your gun and not your mouth. We'll catch you next time, and thanks for tuning in.